Well, we'll go ahead and call to order the WRC meeting for January 13th. I want to say Happy New Year to everybody for being here and appreciate and hope everybody had a good holidays with their family. I sure did. So let's see. I want to say welcome to everybody as I just did. Erica Zavaleta will not be able to join today. I talked to her. She's feeling under the weather, but she and I did talk. Participants will be placed on mute. When it's time for members of the public to engage in a conversation about the agenda item, you will receive instructions on how to indicate you would like to contribute to the conversation. Speakers will be able to unmute themselves individually when called upon. Please keep your microphone on mute when not speaking. Melissa is going to provide technical notes, followed by Ari with introductions and a meeting overview.
Great. Good morning. Melissa Miller-Henson, Executive Director of the California Fish and Game Commission. And for those of you who are here in the meeting room, please do mute your computers and especially Zoom, which has a separate mute function. As you heard, it does create echoing both at our end and at the other end for folks who are listening, especially if you're connected to the webinar. If you're participating in the Zoom webinar and calling in by phone, please make sure that your phone number and your Zoom webinar are linked. If you logged into Zoom first and used the call me option, the linkage happened automatically. For those folks who are on the phone only, exciting news, *9 works again. So if you are on the phone only and would like to participate in the conversation, you can press *9 on your phone once to raise your hand and alert us that you would like to contribute to the conversation. Note, however, that if you press *9 on your phone a second time, you will take yourself out of the queue. So please only press it once. David Howe will manage the queue of speakers, and you will need to unmute yourself using the Zoom button or by pressing *6 on your phone. You may also turn on your video if you would like. For any technical difficulties with the meeting, contact FGC at fgc.ca.gov. Again, that's FGC at fgc.ca.gov. That's the preferred method. Or if necessary, you may call 916-201-6201. For those on Zoom, video is available again if you'd like to turn your video on, though it is optional. And for each item, the presiding chair, who is Commissioner Anderson today, we'll first call on speakers here in Sacramento, and then we'll ask for speakers via Zoom and phone. Zoom's chat feature is disabled for everyone other than to communicate with the host.
Okay, good morning, everybody. My name is Ari Kornman. I'm the Wildlife Advisor for the California Fish and Game Commission. Also joining us, you just met Melissa Miller-Henson, Executive Director of the Commission. Also joining us is Executive Analyst Kelsey Laird, our new Sea Grant State Fellow Amanda Specht, and joining by Zoom is Regulatory Analyst David Haug. Department staff participating today includes Deputy Director for Wildlife and Fisheries Division, Chad Dibble, Wildlife Branch Chief Scott Gardner, Fisheries Branch Chief Jay Rowan, Assistant Chief for Law Enforcement Division, Robert Pelsman. Oh, he's not here. Also, there we go. Nathaniel Arnold, Deputy Director and Chief for the Law Enforcement Division. And I believe that's all for the main department staff on the dais. There are other department staff that will be participating in presentations and other items, and I'll introduce them as we get to those items. A short overview of today's meeting. The committee is comprised of up to 2 commissioners who co-chairs. Our goal is informed discussion to guide future decision-making, and we need your cooperation to ensure a lively and comprehensive dialogue. We're operating under the Bagley-Keene Open Meeting Act. It's important to note, however, that the committee cannot take action independent of the full commission. Instead, the committee makes recommendations to the commission at regularly scheduled meetings. The proceedings are being recorded. They'll be posted to the commission's website or the YouTube page for reference and archival purposes. So you can always go back and rewatch the meeting. Items may be heard in any order pursuant to the determination of the committee chair or the co-chairs. These committee meetings operate informally and provide an opportunity for everyone to contribute to the discussion about the agenda items. If you wish to contribute, please follow these guidelines. First, raise your hand, either in person or on Zoom, and wait to be recognized by the chair or a co-chair or commission staff. Please share your name and affiliation if you have an affiliation. It's not required, but we very much appreciate knowing who we're talking to. Time is limited, so please be concise to give everybody a chance to speak. We really do want to hear from everybody. Several speakers have the same concerns or ideas. Please appoint a group spokesperson. Generally, participants are called on first in the room, followed by participants joining by Zoom or phone. As the topic discussion evolves, we encourage participants to continue contributing to the dialogue. And if you're speaking during the general public comment item, that's for items not on the agenda. So the subject matter you present should not be related to any item on the current agenda. The nearest emergency exit is out the doors that you came in and down the stairs in the unlikely emergency, and the restrooms are also out the door and to the left. I think that's it for introductions.
Great, thanks, Ari. Before we start the first agenda item, I ask that elected officials, tribal council members, or their representatives raise their hand using the Zoom raise hand feature. When introducing yourselves, please state your name, title, or tribe, or district or official you represent, and tell us which agenda item you wish to speak to today. If you're on the phone, press 9 on your phone once to raise your hand and alert us that you would like to contribute to the conversation. If you press 9 on your phone a second time, you will take yourself out of the queue. David will manage the queue speakers. We will need to unmute yourself by pressing the Zoom button or pressing 6 on your phone, or you may turn on your video if desired. We ask that elected officials and tribal representatives joining us today feel free to join us at the table and introduce yourself. Please hold any substantive comments for any relevant items. Are there any elected officials in the room or tribal members? Are there any online?
Commissioner Anderson, we have no raised hands online.
Thank you very much. So with that, I think we'll move to item number 1.
Okay. Well, that's to approve the order of agenda.
So I approve the order of the agenda.
All right.
Well organized.
All right.
Number 2.
Number 2 is sport fishing. Last year, the department presented its recommendations for amendments to sport fishing regulations. For workload management purposes, further consideration of those recommendations was postponed until this cycle. Last meeting, the department reintroduced its recommendations and a handful of new ones for potential consideration in a rulemaking this year. So to provide an overview of the department's recommendations, we have Maggie McCann, the department.
You want me at the table?
Yeah, you
Maggie.
can sit right here.
Sure.
You got your presentation up in a moment. All right.
Good morning. My name is Maggie McCann. I'm the regulations specialist in the fisheries branch. And I'm here to present the new changes to the annual recommendations for sport fishing regulations for 2027. Next slide. So just as a refresher, every year the fisheries branch solicits recommendations from programs and regions for the annual sport fish update. Because it was postponed last year, we have incorporated recommendations from 2024 into this package. In September, we presented the WRC with 18 total recommendations, and I'm not going to present those again today, but there is a summary document available to you and to the public for more information for all those changes. But today we have 3 new recommendations since September, and these include removing section 2.11, which relates to the harvest of Clear Lake Hitch, clarifications on how to measure fish, and a proposed Klamath summer season. Next slide, please. In 2014, Clear Lake Hitch were listed under the California Endangered Species Act as threatened and can no longer be taken without a CISA incidental take permit or MOU, Memorandum of Understanding. However, section 211 relating to the harvest of Clear Lake Hitch was never removed from Title 14. The language in this section conflicts with the take prohibitions for Clear Lake Hitch and needs to be removed from Title 14 to avoid confusion for anglers. Next slide, please. The second recommended regulation change applies to both marine and freshwater sport fishing, and that's the reason we took inland out of the title. And it's a clarification of the method for determining fin fish length to ascertain whether or not fish are legally sized. Fanning and swinging of fish's tail is expressly allowed for salmon and halibut, but it's not specified in the general maximum length Title 14 section. It has been a long time practice for our law enforcement officers to allow this, but it is not consistently understood by anglers. And crew and board commercial passenger fishing vessels, have requested clarification to ensure that they are measuring passengers' fish correctly. And this recommendation also changes existing language that refers to mollusks or crustaceans to the term invertebrates, which is more inclusive and encompasses other groups like echinoderms. It clarifies that methods to determine length for invertebrates are found in the individual subsections for those species. Recreational fishing groups, including American Sport Fishing Association, Sport Fishing Association of California, and Coastal Conservation Association of California, were contacted and support these changes. Next slide. So our last new recommendation is to increase fishing opportunity by allowing catch and release fishing within the anadromous sections of the mainstream Klamath River from the Copco Road Bridge at Copco Lake to Lakeview Road Bridge near Iron Gate in Siskiyou County. The open seasons would be a summer season from the 4th Saturday in May through August 31st, with a restriction that only artificial lures with barbless hooks may be used. Additional restrictions include a 0 bag limit for hatchery trout and steelhead, as well as being closed to the take and possession of Chinook salmon. This change would provide recreational angling opportunity for freshwater fish during the summer months within the Klamath Dam Removal Project area. The proposed summer season regulations would provide consistency with currently open waters adjacent to and upstream of this section. Next slide. Today, we are asking for a recommendation to go to the commission with April 2026 notice, a June discussion, and August adoption, so that we can have the regulations go into effect January 1st, 2027. Next slide. Thank you for listening, and let us know if you have any questions.
Thank you, Maggie. I appreciate that. Before I start, are there any comments in the room? Go ahead.
I'll just sit here. Carl Kirster, I'm a falconer, and it's not an everyday thing, but it would be nice if we did not have a restriction on being able to fish using falconry. At the moment, it's not listed. I see a small revenue increase for the department from falconers if there was simply a note in the fishing regulations that falconers that are catching fish with their birds have to buy a fishing license. At the moment, it's just not a listed legal method of take.
Thank you. We'll take that under consideration. Anyone else? Is there anyone online?
We have no raised hands on Zoom. However, I see that Matthew Duncan is unmuted. Matthew, if you're intending to speak, go ahead.
Yeah, I had nothing to say on this one. Sorry.
No worries. Thank you for letting me know. In that case, Pamela W. has raised her hand. Go ahead, Pamela.
Hi, this is Pamela Williams, and I'm curious about what the survival rate is for the catch and release fish that make it back into the system.
Depends what fish you're talking about.
Yeah, so this is mostly going to open up to trout. We have pretty successful trout catch and release fisheries all over the state and really all over the country. It depends a lot on environmental conditions at the time, right? If it's warmer, you can have some higher mortality. I don't think we can pin like at any given time, like overall, this is what the mortality may be. There's a lot of variables that go into that. But overall, catch and release fisheries have been pretty successful for trout all over the country. So pretty confident it'll be fairly high.
Great.
So I will.
Thank you.
Thanks, Pamela. Anybody else online?
And we have no further hands raised on Zoom.
Well, thank you. Obviously this was a delay and I appreciate, the department working with the commission staff. As we've said, time and time again, we are all overworked and underpaid. And so we appreciate, Maggie, the great work that you've done in coming back and bringing this forth. I would like to recommend that the Wildlife Resource Committee recommends that the commission support a future rulemaking regarding sport fishing based on the department's recommendations and today's discussion. Item number 3.
Right. Item number 3 is commercial use of rattlesnakes. Currently, there's no regulatory pathway for those who wish to use rattlesnakes for financial gain or profit. Examples of this type of use would include things like dog aversion training, safe handling courses, and the film industry. The department presented this topic at the last WRC meeting, and today there's no presentation, but an overview of the department's recommendations is available in the meeting materials. And we'll continue the discussion today and potentially get a recommendation to move forward.
Is there anybody in the room that would like to comment?
That's what I'm here for mostly this morning. My name is Carl Kirster. Although I'm a falconer and usually talk about falconry, the rattlesnake issue has become very contentious. I don't know if you guys realize how contentious the law enforcement, including Lieutenant Trevor Pell, have made it, that the Pacific Legal Foundation, which represented falconers in a separate action, has jumped onto this. And so there's the department is now being sued over at least one individual whose rattlesnakes were confiscated when he was doing dog avoidance safety training, and all of his snakes were taken. He's now using snakes that are outside the control of the department, albino rattlesnakes and non-indigenous rattlesnakes. So he's still on some level able to do it, but it's not the same. It's not as safe for the dogs that are being trained, because the rattlesnakes that are not the same species that we have here smell different. And so the dogs, which are very scent oriented, aren't being trained to the level of safety that they would be if the department would simply allow the use of native snakes. It may be that the department needs to promulgate regulations that sell a license to people who are going to be doing commercial work with the snakes, or simply to allow it. But at the moment, the situation that's been created where a lawsuit is in process, I understand, I'm not part of it, with the Pacific Legal Foundation, that the department has violated the rights of the citizen whose snakes that were confiscated, and that there was a coordinated planned effort which might be subject to the RICO Act as racketeering to where those snakes were taken. I wanted to bring this to to part of the commission's attention so that you guys may be able to act at this point quickly enough to avoid financial disaster of having a big lawsuit go against you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, so that's, I mean, that's literally why we're here
Yeah.
today. That's exactly what this is designed to do, is to provide a regulatory pathway through the use of permits to allow businesses like that to possess and use rattlesnakes in their businesses. So that's the whole purpose of.
Right, and as we go from this committee to the full commission, there will be a process for public input and for the individuals that are snake handlers and so forth to go ahead and have input about, you know, what the rule and the regs look like.
Yep, input will
Wonderful.
continue.
And
Right.
today's also a great opportunity for that input as well, and in developing the rulemaking package, because staff is in the process of developing that rulemaking now.
Right,
So
well, I would encourage, you know, anybody that is involved in the trade, and God bless you for dealing with snakes. I literally can't stand them, and I don't know how they do it, but you know, more power to you if that's your thing. But I do know that they're a worthwhile tool in training dogs. You know, I've actually seen firsthand the great work that some of these individuals do. So, you know, as the rulemaking process proceeds, I would hope that, Carl, all of the people you're discussing and you're mentioning would come forward and have comment as part of this process.
If I may suggest, if possible, and I don't know what the ins and outs are of the law, what you're able to do, but if the department were simply to just make a declaration that it's allowed and just let people do it, that would probably completely solve the problem, rather than going through the process of giving individual permits.
Well, that, as I understand it, that's what the process is actually for, and we will discuss and debate that issue moving forward. Is there anybody else in the room that would like to comment on the snake issue? Is there anybody online that would like to comment on the snake issue?
We have no raised hands, but it sounds like Marilyn Jasper is looking to participate. Marilyn, go ahead.
Thank you. I do not have raise hand icon. I've checked it all morning, but anyway, in the department's document called Commercial Native Rattlesnake Laws and Regulation, which is very, very thorough on the permitting, but there's no mention of proper habitat or conditions of enclosure for the rattlesnakes. And this sounds like something that you're going to be working on, and it can be included, but we have seen plenty of sickening abuse, or I'll call it mistreatment of snakes, just thrown in by 10, 15, 20 into small containers piled on top of each other. And yet when you look at veterinarian or snake, I can't remember the word that snake hand people are called, or what that profession is called, but they need, especially rattlesnakes, well, all of them, they have to have certain, they need a hiding place. They can't just all be stacked in there. And I'm not saying everybody does that, but it is, I think the requirements need to include, especially when there's going to be inspections of the premises. I don't like to use the term humane, but the very proper treatment of all snakes, but especially rattlesnakes, since some people have let's just say, an aversion to them. And I'm just shocked, not shocked, I was surprised in reading this already. The 3-year-old was done in 2023. Department's papers on commercial native rattlesnake regulations, nothing is in there about proper habitat. So thank you.
Thank you, Marilyn.
Yeah, and for Marilyn and other folks, the Zoom folks have moved where raise hand is located. It used to be right on that bottom bar. It's not anymore. You now have to go to the react button. You click on that react button. If you have a newer version of Zoom, there's one of the options under that is raise hand. And otherwise, if you have an older version, I don't think that it works anymore. And so you have to upgrade. And then we don't have anybody on the phone, so I'm not gonna worry about starting.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else on the snake issue?
Yes.
Yes, we have 2 raised hands at the moment. Rebecca Dimitrick, go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me okay? I unmuted myself.
Yes, we're great.
Okay, super. Thanks so much. I wanted to echo what Marilyn said, definitely. And also, I have a question for you guys. I remember there was something where if a snake comes into captivity, a herptile comes into captivity, it cannot ever be released, except, I guess there's standards for rehab. So that was one of my questions is, are there going to be standards, regulations for that? Because essentially you're taking this animal out of the environment, out of its breeding capacity. So I'd like that addressed. And again, just echoing, and I will say the word humane treatment and professional treatment of these animals where they are not harmed. And hopefully they can just be used for a period of time and put back. But I guess that's probably not going to be the case. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Yeah.
So Marilyn, Rebecca, I'll just state that it's my understanding that we are considering cage conditions, humane standards, if you will, as far as for the handlers, restrictions for the handlers that want to be permitted based on our regulations. Those are being included in this process. So I appreciate the comments. If they're not, we'll take that under advisement and continue to explore that in development of the regulation, the proposal. But it's my understanding right now that is part of what we're talking about in the broader picture of trying to get this authorized.
And on the question that Marilyn had on reintroduction, can you reintroduce, once you capture?
No.
No.
We talked about this last time.
Okay.
There were some comments around, if I remember right, I think there were some comments around, come on up. There were some comments around, releasing and capturing and then releasing, and that's an issue we deal with. The custodial folks at a school or somewhere might capture a snake, and then what do they do? And we've talked a little bit about that, and that's part of the team that's developing this and working through some of those issues.
Yeah, so to answer that question, once a snake has been.
Introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Nathan Smith, Assistant Chief LED. Part of that issue to talk about is the ability to release. Currently, if an animal is taken into rehabilitation that's a rattlesnake, it cannot be released to the wild due to disease considerations. So there's not currently a pathway for an animal from a rehab facility to be released into the wild. So one of the elements of this considered regulation is to allow a pathway for those rehabilitated animals to enter into this use, educational purposes for commercial use properties. So it gives a pathway to hopefully stimulate the rehabilitation efforts for snakes, because currently there's a capacity issue because there's no ability to release them. So this is trying to produce a productive output, a place for these animals to go after being rehabilitated or after being captured from your home and being pulled by a permitted capturing company of whatever nature that may take in this form. But this is trying to produce a productive outlet for that.
That's great. Thank you. All right. Anybody else online?
We have one more hand raised. Greg Herner, go ahead.
Yeah, Greg Herner with the SEI California Coalition. I appreciate Mr. Dill's comments about the scope of this, and that's kind of what I was going to talk about, but I just support this moving forward.
Thank you, Greg. So if there are no more questions in the room or online, I would move that the Wildlife Resource Committee recommends that the commission support future rulemaking regarding the commercial use of rattlesnakes based on the department's recommendation in today's discussion. Moving on to item number 4, Ari.
Before Ari starts, could I say something quickly?
Sure.
We've received some comments from folks. I'm sure they noticed that you were reading from something when making that motion, and folks have voiced concern to staff that why is it that the commissioners have already made a decision about what they're going to do? And so I want to clarify, and we'll do this again for the regular commission meeting in February. The commission and committee co-chairs have not made any decisions. Staff actually provides draft options or motions in the commissioner's materials so that they don't have to try and develop them on the fly. They can modify those at any time. They can do something completely different. They could ask staff to go off and come up with a different motion. But we do provide in their meeting materials, and you'll see them if you look through the meeting binder, you'll see those draft motions in the materials. And we as staff provide those. We always assume the positive, that they will take the action. Oftentimes they do not. But that's what we develop. So the commissioners are not doing this work behind the scenes. We do this for them. And of course, at any point in time.
Well, and oftentimes you give us multiple options for those that can be pro, can be con, can add something. And then in many circumstances, we'll take that and we'll modify it based on the discussion and our own opinions.
Exactly.
Yeah. Thank you, Melissa. That's very helpful. All right.
Okay, so we'll move on to number 4, which is mammal trapping. Several bills were passed during the 2019-2020 legislative session, and they were signed into law extending certain prohibitions for mammal farming. The current regulations are out of date with respect to those new statutory requirements, and so the department is recommending regulatory amendments to bring regulations into compliance with those statutes. Today we'll get a presentation from Matt Meshry from the Wildlife Branch to introduce the department's recommendation.
Thanks.
Welcome, Matt. And we'll get your presentation up in a moment.
Okay.
Thanks, Harvey. Anderson, Commission staff. My name is Matt Meshry. I'm here today to present the department's proposal to update California trapping regulations. This is a cleanup of our regulations. These changes are necessary to maintain consistency with California law, resulting from recent prohibitions on recreational trapping and commercialization of fur taking place between 2020 and 2023. Our approach is to resolve and bring current old regulations where they've been superseded by new law. Next slide. This is a high-level summary to just orient everyone as to the changes that we're proposing today. There's also a handout in the meeting materials that discusses the rationale for each of the changes, as well as the affected regulatory sections. Within those regulatory sections that require update, we proposed 2 additional revisions where we thought that a section could be clarified or simplified. The handout in the meeting materials is organized by presentation slide number on the left, and you'll find that it contains 2 tables. The first table extends from page 1 to page 3, and it contains the required updates. The second table at the bottom of page 3 includes 2 suggested amendments, not mandated by new laws, but that we think simplify or clarify our regulation. You may want to use that handout to help you follow along with the slides in this presentation. Moving to slide number 3.
And Matt, by the way, thank you very much for that detailed summary
Oh,
handout. It's great.
it's good.
Super helpful. So for those who haven't seen it yet, please do take a look. It's got a lot of detail in it.
Excellent. Yes, I think it's helpful. I wanted to give a little bit of background about the trapping license before we discuss the changes. A trapping license authorizing the take of fur-bearing and non-game mammals for recreation or commerce in fur was first required in 1952. In 2003, the license and the examination requirement for competency and proficiency were extended to also apply to individuals who offered nuisance wildlife control services for profit.
In 2020, the department began requiring annual reports from nuisance wildlife control operators. And it's important to note that nuisance wildlife trappers have never been allowed to take fur when offering their services for profit. So while the trapping license had its origin in fur trapping, next slide. By 2020, the passage of 3 bills meant that the trapping license authorization was limited exclusively to depredation and wildlife control. In sum, these 3 bills brought changes to the allowable uses of traps and the possession or sale of fur in California. I'll now talk a little bit about each of these bills and the regulations requiring review. Next slide. AB 273 prohibited all recreational fur trapping, and it refocused the context for reporting to trappers' take of fur-bearing and non-game mammals rather than the number of furs taken. This prompted review of several sections of Title 14, including the possession of mammals, including non-game mammals, the use of traps, trapping reports, and the hours during which you may take non-game mammals under authorization of a hunting or trapping license. Next slide. Because the trapping license has now transitioned to exclusive use for wildlife control, our amendments remove reference to a trapping license in conjunction with the seasons and bag limits that pertain to recreational taking and possession of fur-bearing or non-game mammals. Regarding the use of traps, our revisions remove the definition of body gripping traps and the description of traps that are lawful for recreation or commerce in fur. This change was among several included in petition 2023-13 that were supported by the department, and the commission adopted the department's recommendation in response to this petition at the October meeting last fall. Finally, in the third bullet here, we've proposed to remove reference to lawful uses of traps from regulations governing the hours during which non-game mammals may be taken. Next slide. This slide discusses one of 2 optional amendments, not required by statute, but that we propose for clarity. This pertains to mountain lion, and you'll find this change in the bottom of the handout on page 3 in that second table. The law provides since 1990 that the mountain lion is a specially protected species in California. As of that time, restricted species permits for mountain lions may no longer be issued. The department now authorizes possession of mountain lions only through its scientific collecting permit process. Regulations still reference the exemption for possession of a mountain lion under a restricted species permit issued prior to 1990. There are no such active permits for mountain lions existing in department records, and no new permits of this type may be issued according to law. We're proposing to remove reference to the possession of a mountain lion under a restricted species permit issued prior to 1990. And we think that this language is no longer needed and that the revision simplifies the regulation with no substantive effect. Next slide. In regard to trapping reports, law and Fish and Game Code since 2020 requires that trappers must report their take of each fur-bearing and non-game mammal under a trapping license. Our regulation concerning trapper reports states that trappers must report their take of fur. We propose to amend the regulation to instead require a report of the number of fur-bearing and non-game mammals taken. The second bulleted, the second bulleted item here is another of the 2 optional changes that we propose for clarity on the bottom of page 3 of the handout. And so in the context of fur trapping, take was always understood to be lethal. However, because trappers' take may since 2020 be lethal or non-lethal to include catch and release or hazing activities, we propose to clarify in the reports whether take is lethal or non-lethal. Next slide. Also, in regard to trapper reporting, current law requires a trapping license to be suspended for a year if a report is not received by July 1, unless the applicant has submitted to the department a report of their take of each fur-bearing and non-game mammal. The existing regulation requires that if a trapper fails to report, a hearing must be noticed with the Fish and Game Commission, and the commission must then determine whether a license may be reinstated. There's no statutory requirement for the commission to be noticed or to hold a hearing to determine license reinstatement, as the regulations currently indicate. This level of oversight seemed intended to regulate the take of fur. Our proposal would instead allow the department to reinstate a trapping license that has been suspended for non-reporting after the department has received the required take reports. This change is consistent with statute and the commission's authority to regulate commercial activities involving the take of wildlife. Next slide. Assembly Bill 44 became operative in 2023 and prohibits the production or sale of what it defined as a new fur product. It identified documentary requirements of a used fur product, and this prompted a review of our regulations. We suggest amendments to 2 sections regarding bobcat pelts and fur dealer and fur agent licenses. Next slide. Regarding bobcat pelts, law now requires that a record of sale must be maintained for at least a year when a person sells a used fur product. Current regulation concerning bobcat pelts does not reference this requirement. We propose to add reference to the required documentation for a used fur product and update the authority sections pertaining to bobcat pelts. Next slide. Our regulations still contain a section devoted to fur dealer and fur agent licenses that the department sold prior to 2020. Law now prohibits the sale of fur-bearing or non-game mammals. We are proposing a repeal of this section devoted to these licenses that the department no longer sells. Next slide. Relative to our current change proposal today, AB 1254 specified that a depredation permit is required for taking bobcats. It expressly excluded bobcats from the provisions of Fish and Game Code that allow the public to take non-game mammals when injuring crops or property, meaning that traps may only be used for bobcats in accordance with the specific provisions of a department-issued permit. Our review found that amendments were required to the regulation concerning bobcat take. Next slide. Law requires a depredation permit for bobcats. Our regulations, however, still reference taking bobcats pursuant to the statute in Fish and Game Code allowing for depredation of non-game mammals. This does not apply to bobcats. We propose to remove reference to this statute allowing the take of bobcats when in conflict with property owners, as it does not apply. Next slide. With that, I will conclude the presentation of the department's proposal to amend trapping regulations, and my contact information is listed there. If you have questions, feel free to reach out, and I thank you all.
Great, Matt. Thank you very much for that very thorough presentation. Is there anybody in the room that would like to comment on the trapping issue? Seeing none, is there anybody online that would like to comment on the trapping issue?
Yes, we currently have 2 raised hands. Pamela, go ahead.
Pamela Williams, San Diego. I have a response to the proposal that the agency takes over the issuance of trapping license when late reports are submitted. To me, that seems like that automatic reinstatement shifts the responsibility to the agency instead of to the trapper. And I see no reason to do that. And then secondly, I'm wondering about enforcement in all of these provisions and what penalties are should there be someone identified as violating them. Thank you.
Can I maybe clarify? I'm not sure I understood her first comment with reference to putting the workload, or what did you say about the licensing and reporting?
It was a proposal to amend the regulations so that if a trapper does not issue or submit their trapping report, I guess it had to go to the commission and there was a notice made, is the existing regulation, and the proposal is to eliminate all that. And should the trapper submit a late report, they're automatically reinstated for their trapping license.
I think the proposal is that it would be at the department's discretion to, we would have the ability to reinstate them should we feel that there was maybe no violations or other issues, or how late the report was, or how conclusive it was. But to sort of streamline the process for the trappers that maybe they were late by a month, or who knows what happens, but give us that ability and not have to bog that process down or take the commission's time in something that may be trivial, it may be super controversial, who knows, but that's the intent. And so I don't think the word automatic is correct, but I think it allows the department to have the authority to go ahead and issue it without having to go through the full commission process. It would still be under our discretion of whether we believe that person should be issued another license, and that law enforcement could probably speak to some of the concerns that you expressed in the second part.
Yeah, so for the second part of the question, this is Nate Arnold, Chief of Law Enforcement for the department. And I want to make sure that I get it all the way through, but like any violation, we've been enforcing trapping in different iterations throughout the years. To do this is now a new iteration that we would be able to enforce as we would. So you'd have to follow the law, the regulations of what's going on. For enforcement purposes, if there was a violation to be seen, that violation would be filed with the courts. Now every court has a bail schedule, but of course the judge can, depending on the courts, can do various fines and penalties depending on the circumstances of the actual violation, how many times they violated, those type of things.
Thank you. I think that answers it.
The other thing I would just add is that the change on the reporting is significant from, it was primarily intended to regulate the take of fur. You can't take fur now.
Right.
And that was a somewhat discretionary sort of privilege for people.
Sure.
You know, so it raised that to really coming in front of the commission. Now it's really all under depredation, which is, you know, something that people are sort of given that right through code.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
The main interest is getting the report, right? Like that's what we want to get out of this. The goal is we want the report from the trapping, and it's not to, you know, necessarily slap people on the wrists or penalize them or anything. It's to get the report. We need the data. We need the reporting. Once that's accomplished, there's not really necessarily, unless there've been some other violation, right? That's a different bucket, but otherwise, there's not really any reason not to reissue and allow trapping again. It's totally reasonable not to allow trapping if we're owed a report and don't have it. It's totally reasonable to hold off on that, but once we get it, then there's no reason not to let that trapping continue.
And I think what we're looking at here is, it's not to trap or not to trap. That's not being debated. It's to get, law that was passed by the legislature consistent with the regs, and to make sure that, in essence, all of this has been cleaned up.
Right.
And the report is due very shortly after the season ends. So our most typical thing is that somebody just has a slight delay.
Yeah.
In just their ability to actually put it together.
Right.
Yeah.
One more thing.
I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say, and quite honestly, the regulation with regard to when that trapping report has to be delivered, and if it's not delivered by that time, they cannot renew their trapping license. That's a commission regulation. The commission created that regulation.
Okay.
And what the commission, this was many, many years ago, what they didn't realize at the time is that by having that deadline so close to the end of the trapping season, the vast majority of trappers get their reports in, but there's a whole lot of, many dozens who don't get it in a matter of days after, and by that deadline. And so what it's created is the license and revenue branch gets a slew of, names, typically several dozen names of people who didn't meet that deadline. They send them over to us and say, what do we do with these? And the reality is you've delegated to me as executive director the ability to say, great, turn in your trapping reporting, you get your license. Why go through that process when the department can make that determination? The department can say, turn in your report and we'll give you your next license, right? There's never a question about whether or not they get their license. It's a question of, did they submit their report? And if they didn't, you need to submit it.
Right.
And what people might not understand is that the current process, which is a hearing for the commission. I mean, the commissioner knows, he's been involved in those. It's an extremely onerous process that takes a long amount of time to set up these hearings and go through the process.
So quick question just for education, how many, give or take, how many requests or how many trappers do we have out there that are submitting reports? Or is it thousands?
So in the old context of fur trapping, for the 10 years prior to the end of fur trapping, we had an average of 100 to 200 fur trappers. And when we now talk about pest control trappers since 2020, we have 600 to 700 of the pest control trappers who have required reports.
And what percentage do you see that actually have a problem with not getting their report in on time?
In the recent years, I would say that, between 50 and 100.
Out of the 600.
On July 1 are not in compliance.
Okay.
And they can trap depredation year round. When this was created for fur bearing, those seasons had ended well before. So it was reasonable to expect it to be there on July 1. Now it's like due the next day.
Right.
How do you have your annual report the day after?
Right. Well, and that's why you're getting the discretion to be able to make a sensible decision. And I think that, we trust in the department to be able to go ahead and look at this and determine whether or not it was egregious or not. And if it wasn't egregious, we'll then, allow the person to continue to do so. Yes, Carl.
I have a perhaps helpful suggestion. With the falconry license, when you go online to renew, there's a contraption in the computer system that you have created that won't let you put your falconry license into the cart until you've done your annual take report. You could do that.
Is that the case now with trapping?
There's we can talk more about that. There's some difficulties because the license actually goes on sale prior to prior to the change of the fiscal year. So the licenses begin being sold in, I believe, the beginning of May.
It's just like the sturgeon thing we just went through with the commission. I mean, it's very difficult with the reporting period. So you're either reporting kind of old data. I mean, typically you're gonna say, okay, July 1 is the new date. You're gonna ask somebody to be reporting basically through like May in order for them to be able to have 60 days or so to be compliant to then apply for their new July. So you're always either gonna be behind or you're always gonna be like it's your reporting is always gonna be back. And then how useful is it if it's 18 months ago, you're finally getting the data, or you're always playing that game with these deadlines and annual sort of cycles.
Okay, great. Anybody else online? All right. Hearing no.
We do. We have several.
Oh, we do? Okay, go ahead.
Stephen Finneroli, are you able to unmute yourself?
Morning, Melissa and commissioners. Yeah, thanks. Stephen Finneroli with the California Farm Bureau. I was, I think, having flashbacks to last year's 8-hour-long hearing when I saw this item on the agenda. But I think if I read it right, and if I'm kind of understanding the presentation, this doesn't touch 47 or 472 and 4152. So I hope this was the continuation of last year's item where there was an attempt to try and square up regulations and not have conflicting themes within code. So Again, if I'm understanding it right, all good on our end and appreciate the commission kind of finding a really targeted way to go about that. So anyways, thanks for that, and thanks to Ari for that quick reply. But anyways, I appreciate it.
Thanks, Stephen. Next.
And apologies, Chair Anderson, for that slight delay, but I'm ready to go here. Rebecca Dimitrick, go ahead, please.
Hi, thanks. Yeah, a couple questions here. First of all, thank you so much. My understanding is you're putting a column, a row or whatever for non-lethal. That's amazing. Another question is, what about bats? Maybe adding a few more animals on there, bats, because so many of those get caught by trappers who are doing exclusion work. They get killed, whether it's in this collective trap that they put on there, the bats come out and they get collected in a box and destroyed. But also the fact that, oh gosh, so many maternal colonies get wiped out through eviction. And bats are not on the radar. And I know this would probably take years to do, but please put bats on your radar. So many get killed by pest control operators. Another animal to put on there might be the red fox, just for interest, how many are being responded to and killed. Squirrels, I don't see them on there. And wood rats, because we have some endangered wood rats and they are being killed because they are by pest control companies thinking they are the Norwegian rat, the Norway rat. Okay, so that's one thing. When a trapper takes a raccoon, say a female raccoon, there's nothing in here to show if her babies, the kits, are removed and taken to rehab, where rehabilitators are supposed to turn them away because they're healthy neonates. This happens a lot and under the radar. Is there a place to see that, what's going on there? Not sure why I understand the importance of days trapped. You have a column there for days trapped, and I just, you don't need to explain it now. I'm just saying that I don't understand why that's valid. And then, what about birds? There's nothing here about birds being killed. A lot of animals getting killed under the name of nuisance. And I just wondered if there's a place for us to discuss more of that, documenting those takes. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thanks. We'll take that under consideration and come back and look at that list and some of those recommendations.
Great. Thank you very much. Is there anybody else online?
Yes, we have one more hand raised. Kimberly Richard with Napa County. Go ahead.
Hi, yes. This is Kimberly Richard. I'm the representative for District 4 here in Napa County. And I just want to say thank you for that awesome report. I just have a quick question about the non-lethal. I know that part of the Fish and Game Code is to euthanize or release animals immediately on site. Relocation is prohibited. Is there a way y'all could look at that? And let's say, because we all know wildlife, humans are encroaching now more so in wildlife habitat, and they really don't have any place else to go. And are y'all prohibit to allowing a trapper or a pest control trapper to maybe take a raccoon or a possum or a skunk instead of automatically euthanizing them and killing them, maybe, within a 15-minute drive from where, they were trapped, or relocating them somewhere and releasing? Are y'all looking at doing something like that to change that? Euthanize to maybe just go ahead and release, either or, depending on if the animal is sick or not. It can be at the discretion of the trapper, or if the animal can be rehabilitated, or if it is a mother who has babies somewhere and the trapper can see that she is lactating or something. Are y'all looking at revising that relocation prohibit? Thank you.
I would say with respect to the relocation, statutes prohibit transportation or release of wildlife. So it would require a legislative effort to amend that rule.
Okay, so that will be something that we'll be picking up in legislation this coming year. Because I know that there's going to be a new amendment to trapping coming up that's in the works right now. So thank you very much.
Great. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Is there anybody else online?
Rebecca Dimitrick has her hand raised again.
Hi, thanks, guys. Just to address that, look, my company, Humane Wildlife Control, I've been doing this for over 10 years. Trapping, in my professional opinion, is an outdated way of resolving human-wildlife conflicts. And it's the humane way of doing it, the non-lethal way of doing it is growing. I appreciate that you do not allow relocation. I hope that doesn't change because it's basically a death sentence and it's kind of an, they want this, the trappers want this so that it's an easy way out. They don't have to kill the animal in the presence of the client. People don't want to kill animals. They just want their problem resolved. And there are non-lethal ways of doing it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And not hearing any further comments, we will move on to item number 5, Department Lands.
Okay. Commission regulations provide the regulatory framework for public use of lands owned, managed, and or administered by the department, including wildlife areas and ecological reserves. As needed or requested, the commission considers regulatory amendments that govern various public activities on department lands. Those include things like hunting, fishing, boating, hiking, horseback riding. Regulations for department lands were last amended in 2024. And today, Christy Kripe from the department will present an overview of its recommendations for amendments to department lands regulations. And we have Christy.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Okay. We have Christy. We'll get your presentation up in a moment.
Okay.
Okay, there we go.
Great. Thank you for this opportunity to present these proposed changes to department lands. Go ahead and go to the next slide. So in 2024, we had a really large package. This year, we have a much smaller package that we're presenting, but we're still going to be looking at general visitor use regulations, some property-specific regulations. We have some proposals for Lands Pass program updates, and 2 properties for new designations. Go ahead and go to the next slide. So for the 2 proposals we have for new wildlife areas, one of them is Big Springs Ranch. That's shown here in this photo. That's going to be in Siskiyou County in our Region 1, and we're looking at having a Type B wildlife area. The second one is Sheep Ranch in Region 2, and that would be our first wildlife area in Calaveras County, and they're looking at a Type C wildlife area. Next slide. So for our proposals for the Lands Pass program, I just wanted to give a little background on the program. It started in the 1980s with just 7 properties across the state, and it was developed to generate revenue to support management and preservation of our lands. And so in 2013, the legislature directed the department to develop more income by expanding for our management, by expanding the Lands Pass program. And I believe in 2015, the WRC had the department work on expanding that program. So the program was expanded to 43 properties. And just a little more information. The sign is up at Table Mountain, and it shows, you can see here that children under 16, or if you have a fishing or hunting license in your name, you're not required for a Lands Pass. But it does, and you can pick the property that you're purchasing the pass, and the funds go back to that property. So next slide. After we expanded the program, several of the properties had to be suspended based on concerns from the Coastal Commission and the State Lands Commission. And so we're looking at removing a few of those properties from the program. You can see in the reasons column, the CC is Coastal Commission and the SLC State Lands Commission. So we have 13 properties in the Coastal Commission that we're asking the commission to remove from the program. We also have 2 properties. One is South Spit Wildlife Area towards the middle of the slide, and Cache Creek Wildlife Area. Those properties, the pass never started on them because they're managed by BLM. So we're asking to remove those, and South Spit is also in the Coastal Commission zone. And then finally, Hope Valley Wildlife Area in Alpine County was petitioned. The county petitioned the commission to remove that property from the program, and that was approved. So we have 15 Lands Fast properties that we're looking at removing from the program. And then next slide. We also have 8 properties that we're looking at reinstating in the program. None of these properties on the slide are in the Coastal Commission zone. And the top 5 properties, Honey Lake, Tehama, Yola Bypass, North Grasslands, and Mendota, they don't have any nexus with State Lands Commission. So we will be working on reestablishing the pass on these properties. The bottom 3 properties, Grizzly, Napa Sonoma, and Imperial Wildlife Area, have multiple units, and some of their units do have State Lands Commission leases, but the areas where the pass is required do not. So Grizzly Island Wildlife Area, we're going to be proposing to add exclude crescent unit text in the regulation package. Right now, that unit is close to the public, so it wouldn't require a pass anyway, but in the future, if anyone wants to open that unit, the Lands Pass wouldn't be required on there. Napa Sonoma, the only unit that requires a pass is Green Island unit, and that doesn't have a State Lands Commission, and same with Worcester and Finney Raymer units. So we're working on reinstating these properties. This portion doesn't actually require a regulation. We'll just be unsuspending them, but we wanted to use this opportunity to let people know that we're working on this concurrently. Next slide. We have one more property that we're going to try to work on reinstating. This property is in the Coastal Commission zone, which is shown as the blue line. This is Elkhorn Slough Ecological Reserve. It's one of the original properties from the 1980s. This property, you can see in the pink, doesn't actually go all the way to the coast. So we're going to be working with the Coastal Commission during the same time to try to get the permitting done so we can get this property back in the Lands Pass program. Next slide. So for our general use regulations, we just have some minor text edits to clarify ejections and penalties for hunters, clarify where target shooting is prohibited, allowed, and I'll talk about that on the next slide. We have a new proposal to prohibit the use from visitors of using trail cameras on wildlife areas and ecological reserves. And we just have some items where we're adding like the word facility so that vacancy draws can be done from Hunter Check Station as well as from department lands. And then we're going to be updating the special use permit to update the contact information and remove the fees, which will reduce the need for an annual Section 100 regulation. Next slide. For target shooting, historically, Title 14, Section 550cc had more information than currently. It just says firearms, archery, and other propulsive equipment. We're proposing to add the highlighted text just to clarify that target shooting is prohibited on all department lands except designated shooting sites. And this is the proposed text. We'll be working with LED and the core team just to make sure that it's clear, more clear for the public and for enforcement. Next slide. So last time we had a lot of changes in this section, 551 for wildlife areas. We just have a few changes this time. One of them is Napa Sonoma marshes. Last time we added dog training in designated areas only, and that's not working out on this particular property. And so we want to update that to the Ringstrom Bay unit only. And then we had a request from the public for hunters to be allowed to use bicycles when accessing waterfowl hunting on Napa Sonoma. And we worked with management, and we're proposing to allow hunters to use bicycles to access Pond 1 and 1A during the waterfowl season, just on Wednesdays, Saturdays, and Sundays. So we'll be working with the core team on that. And then we have for horses and pack stock, Volta wants to prohibit horses similar to the other managed wetlands that we did in the last regulation package. Gray Lodge wants to prohibit boats. We have another change for Gray Lodge, which is to allow camping the night before a hunt. Currently, you're allowed to hunt the night before waterfowl season, and they just want to remove the word waterfowl, which would allow junior hunters the opportunity to camp the night before, and things like the spring turkey hunt. Next slide. There was a recent regulation change for lakes, and that opened Trout Bay Lake and Bass Lake on Shasta Valley Wildlife Area. And we're proposing to close those during waterfowl season because they're too small to have both of the activities occurring, hunting and fishing at the same time. So we're proposing just to have a fishing closure on that lake during waterfowl season. And then Gray Lodge has had a fallen turkey hunt with regional manager authority, and we just want to get that one on the books so that both fall and spring are in regulation. And YOLO Bypass has some new opportunity. They're developing a mentored apprentice deer and turkey hunts. And then lastly, Gray Lodge and YOLO want to update the regulations to up to 3 persons. Right now, I believe it says up to 3 hunters, and we're trying to standardize that with all the type A and B wildlife areas. Next slide. So we're actively working with the National Wildlife Refuge System for their 9 properties that we have that are also designated as wildlife areas. I started working with San Luis Refuge to update a few regulations that make it more consistent with some of their other properties. And one of them is that you need to be off the property within 1.5 hours after sunset, unless you're participating in an overnight stay. And so right now we're working and reaching out to all of the refuges to see if they have any additions or changes. And we also want to kind of organize the information so across those 9 properties, it's presented in the same order. So I'll have more on that in the May meeting. And then the next slide. And last but not least, our ecological reserves. We just have 2 proposals here. One is to allow hunting at Bowden Canyon Ecological Reserve. It's currently allowed. We just want to change the wording to just allowed. So it's consistent with the National Forest lands. This property is surrounded by U.S. Forest Service land. So, and shown here in this photo is Eden Landing Ecological Reserves, and they just want to add this standard blurb of hunters may only have 25 shotgun shells in possession while in the field to address some situations at that property. Next slide. And with that, here's some Roosevelt elk from Lake Earl Wildlife Area taken by the manager there. I appreciate this opportunity, and let me know if you have any questions now, or feel free to email me and I'll get back to you. Thank you.
Christy, thank you very much. Appreciate that. Very thorough. Do we have any commenters in the room? Mark, go ahead. Come on up.
Terry Anderson, Park County, California waterfowl. You guys all know there was a bill that was passed over the fall that the governor signed regarding the take of mute swans. And so that is now legal throughout California starting January 1st. And it's important because it's going to help hunters and other landowners to control their populations. They've been spreading throughout the state. I mean, if you look at the past few years' data, they're starting to really rise significantly. So we need to get ahead of the problem. So it's a good thing. Just as an aside too, they also being non-native species, they have caused significant damage to wetland habitats because they are so big and they feed just voraciously. The other thing is they drive out native waterfowl off their breeding grounds. And this isn't a California issue, as a lot of you know. This is a problem on the East Coast in the Great Lakes too. So it's, again, good that we're getting ahead of it. However, we have not yet updated the public use regulations for the state and federal areas on this. So my understanding is technically, if you want to go out on a type A, type B, C, whatever wildlife area and take a mute swan, that is prohibited. This would include places like Napa Sonoma Marsh, Petaluma Marsh, Grizzly Island Wildlife Area, where we have a lot of them out there. So what we are asking is if you can authorize through the regulations the take of mute swans. We would like it to be limited to shotguns only and to be limited only to the normal waterfowl season. And obviously you have a various, types of lands out there. Some allow hunting, some do not. We would only want this to be open on areas where waterfowl hunting is already occurring. But we think if you truly want to control these critters, it's going to be important that all the lands that they're occupying right now have some kind of hunt program on them.
Thanks, Mark. Appreciate that. Do you guys have any comments on that? I think from a process standpoint.
Let us, I mean, this is obviously introduction here, so let us think that through, and we have another meeting, I think, to talk about this. So we'll play with that a little bit, figure out if there's any pitfalls or concerns or where that is, logistics. It's always, I appreciate that you recognizing what the law says versus what the allowance would be of only during seasons, only where it's allowed already for waterfowl hunting and what have you. So that's really helpful because, as you know, we manage these lands for all types of uses, and there's always these seasonalities and conflicts with, we don't want hunters out there while someone else is doing this and they don't want to be. So we're managing that. So I appreciate you sort of limiting in scope what the proposal is in that space, so we can take that back and think through with some of our wildlife managers, basically at the properties, and see where that might be a possibility to do.
Great. Thanks. Any more commenters in the room? Any commenters online?
We have 3 raised hands online at the moment. Kimberly Richard with Napa County. Go ahead, please.
Hi, yes, Kimberly Richard again. I just have to, I'm sorry, the gentleman that just spoke, his name was Mark, I believe. I actually agree with his recommendation. I am not a hunter, but I do believe in a hunt to table. But my main question is, I heard her say something about hunters being able to ride a bicycle. And I think that's absolutely wonderful. I know that my friend is a duck hunter, and he has to walk almost 2.5, 3 miles to get to his duck blind, carrying everything. So I just wanted to say kudos and thank you so much for the recommendations that you're making. But I was just curious more about the bicycle. How are they going to be able to carry all of their equipment on a bicycle? Is my question, I guess. Thank you. Wait, let me get my.
You there, Christy?
Yes. Did you want me to respond to the people usually have a cart behind their bike that they pull. And during hunt season on type A and B wildlife areas, hunters are allowed to use bicycles to get from the parking lot to their blind or their hunt spot. And then Napa Sonoma is a type C. And so that was the public request, was for a type C. And those 2 ponds, 1 and 1A, are spots where we could allow them to do that. A lot of that property is tidal and boat in only. And so this was the spot that it would work on. So.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. Appreciate it.
Apologize for the delay on my answer.
It's all right. Thank you.
Perfect. Next commenter.
Bill Gaines, go ahead.
Bill?
Yeah, sorry about that. I had to unmute myself. Thank you so much for the presentation. I want to open up by throwing our complete support behind Mark Henley's comments regarding the take of mute swans. And also want to thank the department for their efforts to add additional hunting opportunity, including the Gray Lodge fall turkey season, allowing that on waterfowl shoot days, and the Ola Bypass Wildlife Area mentored apprentice deer and turkey hunts. All very good stuff, and certainly, something that we strongly support. So we appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bill. Ned?
And Pamela Williams, go ahead.
So how about some clarification about bicycles? I'm not clear on whether you're talking about motorized or non-motorized bicycles. And then secondly, I wondered if you could provide any statistics or even a general idea of how many hunters use these lands versus other public land user groups.
For the bicycle at Napa Sonoma, it's only bicycles. E-bikes are prohibited on all department lands except if they're posted as allowed, and those exceptions are usually when there's a road running through the property, and so access on that public road. So it's bicycles only, and that's the same with the type A and B wildlife areas for hunters. I don't have data on that second question off the top of my head.
Thank you.
All right, any more comments online?
And with that, Chair Anderson, we have no more raised hands on Zoom.
Great, thank you very much. And again, I just want to thank the department and all the great work that went into this. The more access that we can give to hunters, and I think Bill and Mark alluded to it, it's a positive net for everybody. So, thank you for that. We will move into then department updates. Wildlife, what? Oh, we are going to take a bio break for 5 minutes. Is that enough for your bio break? Okay, 5 minutes and we'll be back in 5 minutes. Okay. All right, now we're going to move on to department updates. We're going to start with the wildlife branch.
Okay, great.
Scott?
I wanted to start with normally you see our game programs here, and with the exception of Matt and Callie over there, the big game folks are out busy right now. Doing a lot of things. I wanted to give you an update. One, we are in the second leg of our helicopter capture season. We do basically two sort of split seasons, one prior to Thanksgiving, and then they take a break between Thanksgiving and Christmas. And now we're into that second leg. Since July 1st of 25, we have captured 418 animals. And if you can bear with me, I'll give it to you quickly. 150 bighorn sheep, all from a helicopter. 41 black bears, that's all from the ground. 113 mule deer, those are all ground captures. 4 bobcat from the ground. 93 elk split between the air and the ground. 11 mountain lion from the ground, and 6 wolves. 4 from helicopter and 2 from the ground, and that's, wow, that's pretty good.
That's impressive.
I'll say,
Great work.
Yeah, they're getting it done. So
did all those wolves get collared?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. And were they part of the same pack, or did we attack different packs?
Different packs, and we currently have 10 online, and hopefully at the end of the week, because we're doing captures today. And through this week. So hopefully we are able to extend that.
Right.
So that's with captures. Also kind of consistently kept the commission updated on our deer plan. And we are in the process of conducting scoping sessions. In fact, there were 2 of them last night. Total now, we have conducted 2 tribal listening sessions, 2 online scoping sessions, and 8 in-person sessions. And Chad and I are both smiling because we were really kind of pushing the staff to do this, and they're taking it beyond what we expected. It's interesting in the modern time, like how much interest is there going to be in these in-person meetings? And it's varied. I mean, there was a meeting in Oakland last night that only had 5 people. but we've had as many as 50 people in Reading. So I think we're also starting to feel, where is the interest and where can we bring these conversations, not just limited to deer scoping. So we're getting some good input there. I would say, we expect to complete it probably this year.
Okay.
So working through that, I also want to tell you that on December 18th, we conducted meetings of both our big game advisory committees and upland game advisory committees. Several of you are here in the room. That's a recharge of those advisory committees, which are statutorily required really to address how we spend those funds. But it sort of transcends sort of what we're doing. We gave presentations from all the staff, all the various projects that they're doing. And of course, there was a lot of interest there. So both those advisory committees are getting updated and really developing some legs.
That's great.
And then my final report for you is that right after I reported at the commission meeting, I think it was the next day on CWD, we got another positive CWD. Chronic wasting disease from the Bishop area in town. It was an animal that had been, appeared ill and was euthanized, and the results came back after that. It was euthanized prior to that.
But in the same zone?
Same area,
okay,
right around the town of Bishop. We now have 4 animals, 2 that were roadkill and 2 that were euthanized because they were just obviously ill. One of them walked into our department property. Our department office. So we've got 4 of them locally around the town of Bishop. And Chad and I are going to be meeting with staff here very shortly to figure out, where we go from there. Our veterinarians are working on a live animal test, which apparently there is some possibility out there. It's fairly new. That we're incorporating both in our captures so that we would be able to take samples from animals when we capture them. And then in this case, like how much is this? We need to understand the nature of this outbreak in the Bishop area. And part of that could be capturing and taking live samples. So we'll be meeting on that shortly.
And come back to us with a game plan?
Yes.
That's great.
And no other positives anywhere else. We well exceeded. There's a report online. I won't just throw a bunch of numbers at you, but our surveillance testing has been great in the areas surrounding. Of course, there's mandatory testing, but in the areas surrounding those 2 outbreaks, we've well exceeded our goals for surveillance. So, and those are my updates.
Great. I did have a question. Do you plan on coming back here or to the commission at some point and giving us a more thorough update on the wolf program? Obviously I know that, what's happened recently and, we've done a lot of activity and things and you updated us the last time. But, there is still a lot of interest out there, a lot of comments, a lot of phone calls to myself and other commissioners about what's actually happening with the program.
Yeah, maybe I'll just tell you generally where we are, and then we can talk about what sort of an update you'd like to see here, walk through. But we have committed to, answer your questions and provide you those updates. I think following the commission meeting in December, I was not there, so I apologize for that.
Either was I apologize for that.
We were the same.
We were both sick.
We held a meeting at middle, kind of right before the holiday in December with with all of the counties that have wolves. So that's about 8 counties. Sheriffs from those counties, the ag commissioner from those counties, several NGOs, and several other, federal UC partners, et cetera, in the wolf space, and talked about kind of on Director Bonham's last hurrah, if you will, before you stepped out, to talk about where we're going with wolf and what we need to do collectively as a community. And I think the outcome from that to just cut to it is that, obviously communication is a thing we need. You hear things, we all hear things. So we tried to have a conversation with those affected counties and parties responsible for those constituents to just really set the record on where we are today with wolves, understanding of where we are with capture efforts, how many we have collared, what our numbers are, help everybody understand how we do our annual counts, what activities we're taking, and how we, more importantly, I think, work together going forward. So some of the things that we're working forward right now is trying to plan a conversation around one being compensation. We've heard a lot of comments around the compensation program, which, as you know, has been funded in the past by the legislature. We originally had 3 million. Last year we got 600,000, and this year we have 2 million that we have currently in our budget. Those have been primarily in more recent times focused on direct loss payments.
Yeah.
So we're continuing that program with the ranchers that are affected by conflict and have some sort of depredation caused by wolves. We had a lot of conversation around that. Folks have varied interest in that, and there's concerns on if it's enough of compensation, the way that the department's program is ran right now, whether the formulas, I'll just say the formulas are accurate or not to reflect the true impacts that ranchers are receiving. So we've committed to trying to start some conversations with researchers, with ranchers, with counties, with folks that are impacted by that and have ideas and thoughts around research and monitoring, things that truly affect, to look at that impact and see if there's some revisions that are needed, reimagined to the compensation program.
Yeah.
Recognizing that there's not a whole lot of funds. We
Yeah,
burned through it pretty
and
fast.
and the individuals that I've talked to appreciate the effort in no way, shape, or form, but they still feel they're being shorted because they're being compensated for, a price, and most of the calves that have been taken, don't grow to full capacity. So you're getting X, but you're missing the opportunity to get to Y when that calf becomes a full, grown cow. So
Those are some of the things that we want to have more conversation around. I think we have some ideas, we have some thoughts. Obviously, UC the extension. Ag Extension, UC Davis has done some research, and they're pulling together some numbers, and they've been publishing some of those findings if you followed that. So we want to have that conversation. We want to talk about it. And I think that's the first step.
Yeah.
The second piece of that is really where I think we've had conversation in this room with folks that have commented and have come to your commission, which is more in my mind of, separate meeting, probably crossover with stakeholders and interests, but more in that science, research, and management aspects of how we go forward with wolves in California on this more related holistic recovery species on the landscape. How do we move through that? So I think there's two separate processes and conversations that obviously intertwine, but conversations to have. In the meantime, as Scott mentioned, we are continuing to collar wolves. This is the month that we typically have airtime and space on our contracts, and it's a good time of year to be out trying to collar as many wolves as we can. We continue to keep the wolf tracker tool updated. We're continuing to respond to issues and depredation events and work with wildlife services and other folks that have the ability to investigate those and ensure that there is a compensation payment behind it. And then, of course, doing our normal work, which, as you know, we've discussed, it's a capacity issue across all parties. It's a capacity issue in the ranching community. It's a capacity issue in the department. It's a capacity issue across the board on how we manage these animals and how we can do this collectively and how we help educate people. So that all those conversations are happening. We, as I said, the Director Bonham tried to facilitate that conversation on his way out to sort of point all of us in a direction that we think we need to go. That's across the aisle from the NGOs to the ranching communities, to the farm bureaus, to the cattlemen's, all the above. So we're working in that direction now and continuing to press through that, obviously being responsive as we can as you see things in the media and we get phone calls and we're informed as to what's happening on the landscape.
that's great. Well, when you have that confab, one of the things that I'd be interested in adding in, because I had the opportunity to talk to the individual that was in charge of a wolf program for Wyoming Fish and Game, and I found a lot of their just generic information because they're one of the oldest states that has done reintroduction. So to give the benefit to my fellow commissioners of having either Wyoming or Montana and their fish and game department do a formal presentation via Zoom, I think would be really helpful. There were some, data points that, I was educated on that definitely changed my opinion about sort of where we're at and what we've done and that type of thing. So I don't know, I know you guys have a relationship with them, so maybe we could reach out and see if we're gonna have that, larger group, if we could talk to folks that have done it and gone before us.
Yeah, I think we can do that. And we obviously, we talk with our states, our biologists are in constant communication with them is you're not wrong in that many states we're in a phase they've already been in or been in for years as rules of sort of entered California. So we're working through that and trying to learn from them on how we make it happen. Obviously, every state is different. The landscape is different, how it's managed and the things that happen there. So those are all front of mind for us and things we're doing. I think my recommendation would follow what I believe the director has committed to, which is a conversation. If there was a presentation, probably more appropriate in this venue of the WRC versus the full commission.
Sure.
But I know that also potentially creates conflict for some of the other commissioners that aren't here. But I think with respect to that, this is probably a better venue. I think you need to balance your time and effort and understanding the inquisitive nature, and this is an opportunity to provide some of that public forum and output for us, but also recognizing your ability in the commission and your authorities versus the department's authorities and management of these species and how we're happy, what we can do in that space. So I'd like to balance that, and I think we can accommodate that if we can find the right time on an agenda to work through it. We're happy to give those updates. We do this publicly in small communities often, and we just did it again on the 19th for all of the counties to sort of again, hear everything that we have. This is all our cards on the table. There's a lot of speculation that we're hiding something and we're not working through that, but we're trying our best to be as transparent as we can and share the information that we have available to us.
Sure, I think that would be very productive to have, something here at the Wildlife Resources Committee to actually go ahead and take a look at it. I would wholeheartedly support that. Anything else? Nope. Okay, we'll go to fisheries branch. Jay, you're up.
So a few things here. Golden mussel, aquatic invasive species are in fisheries shop there. So we've got a lot of ongoing responses to golden mussel. I think the big take home there, recently some changes to 2301 and 2302 by the legislature. That changed, those were the sections dealing with quagga and zebra mussels. They are now, it lists aquatic invasive species, aquatic non-native mussels, and connects it back to Fish and Game Code 671. So the recent changes that we made to 671, those are now included in that 2301, 2302 responses. And sort of the keys there is that opens up us to be able to use the Harbors and Watercraft Fund on management of those invasive species that are tied to 671, which is kind of nice. Previously, we could not use that Harbors and Watercraft Fund to respond to golden mussel or anything other than quagga zebra. So the other part there is it's going to trigger reservoir managers to do containment and prevention control plans. So with that, we expect a pretty significant workload as they go and update those plans. So we'll be working on those over the next couple of years as they start turning those plans in. And then we've been having ongoing coordination with the boating community and water managers on access. There was sort of this initial response where reservoirs kind of recoiled sort of instantly, and so they could get a better handle on how to prevent spread into their uninfested reservoirs. So we've been working a lot with them on what a potential larger scale inspection program could look like that they can utilize and be part of. So working on those things. Onto some fish, Sacramento perch. We've been expanding our translocations of Sacramento perch. If you're not familiar with them, they are the only native syncharchid west of the Rockies. So pretty cool native fish, very wide tolerances to different environmental conditions. Unfortunately, they don't do very well with bluegill. So they've largely been extirpated off of most of the valley floor, which is their home. So we're working on trying to find areas where we can put them back. Recently, we've stocked through public and private partnerships. There's a private aquaculturist that has Sacramento perch on hand that we've been working with. And also we partnered with the Sacramento Mosquito and Vector Control to put Sacramento perch in a couple of their ponds at their facility where they raise mosquito fish. They have been wildly successful in those ponds. They are reproducing like crazy. They're doing great there. The vector control district's doing a fantastic job raising those. So we recently took some and we put them into a newly established pond in the Oroville Wildlife Area that's going to provide a fishing opportunity there. And then also in Granite Regional Park Pond, we put some fish in there. So just trying to expand fishing opportunities for a native species. That has really wide, like I mentioned, the environmental tolerances of those fish is going to be critical as we start, furthering into warming climate, et cetera. This is going to be I think a fish we can rely on to put in places where trout are not going to be, we're not going to be able to put trout in as we get into the future in some of these valley floor areas. So, sturgeon, we completed our second field season of sturgeon monitoring. We expect to have a report out soon. We've adopted some lessons learned from the previous season. It appears we have some additional fish recruiting into the fishery from the wet water year in 2017 that we had, which is great. So that's some exciting news there. And then salmon season completed. We're starting to work through all of the data that we have there. Inland, we had a total of 5,270 fish caught. Most of those are in the American and feather. The Sacramento was closed this year, but a total of 4,884 fish, 3,200 of those being adults. So the good news here is that we had a very high gross to adult ratio, looking at about 33% on the American feather and a 41% on the San Joaquin. And for those of you in the know, we use the gross or the 2-year-old numbers to help project what's going to happen in the ocean fishery. So how many 3-year-olds are left out there in the ocean milling around. And these are pretty high numbers, so that's pretty exciting. They're forecasting well for what's coming for next season. So I'm excited about that.
Right. Good. Thank you. Chief?
Yeah, for the law enforcement division, want to give a report, two points. The first one, I want to talk a little bit about our training. We have an academy that just started this week on Monday, actually, with 42 new wildlife officers starting that academy. So 42 sponsored, 3 unsponsored that are in the academy. We're going to wish them the best of luck. They're going through some very, very difficult training during the next about 8 months until they graduate the academy. And then they're off to even more training after that, which I usually give these updates, but this is a week where it kicks off for those new officers. So we're very happy about that. Second point, I want to talk about a case that we just made. It's a wonderful case. And we're going to kind of highlight the efforts of 10 years ago when Assembly Bill 96 came through. What that Assembly Bill was banning ivory and the sale of rhino horn. And why that's important is because of the work that we've done for the last 10 years getting to this point, and it's been astronomical amount of things that we have discovered and done. That bill was sponsored by then Senator Toni Atkins, later pro tem, and she did a wonderful job getting that pushed through. And I'll give you a recent example as of last week of why that bill is important. And as we're approaching our 10-year anniversary of that bill, which is pretty cool. AB 96, of course, being the use 96, because that's how many elephants are poached per day at that time frame in Africa. So, and how that affects California. So in the next year, in 2026, I'm going to be explaining a lot of that about how California officers are doing so much with the world's natural resources to protect Californians. So as of last week, we did 4 search warrants. 1 on a commercial property and 3 residential properties. We were able to shut down an international poaching wildlife trafficking ring. In the doing those search warrants, what we discovered was possession and 2 elephant teeth, 3 elephant trunks, 2 elephant snouts, bags of elephant powder, presumed from the skin, hundreds of elephant skin pieces, dozens of elephant toenails, hundreds of suspected processed ivory pieces, several suspected rhino horns, 2 walrus tusks, dozens of dried gallbladders, turtle shells. And I think that's when I also say like a partridge in a pear tree because of everything that they seized there. But all of that going into the illicit market here in California. So we were able to stop that from going in there, stop that wildlife trafficking ring from continuing to hurt the world's resources. So just wanted to highlight that case and say what a great job our wildlife officers did, led by our special operations team in order to make that case. So that'll be coming out in a press release in the very near future, I think this week, actually.
That's great. Congratulations. That's great work. All right. Then, if nothing more, we'll move on to general public comment. Oh, anybody have a comment on the discussion on the department's reports?
And for those who are online, now's the time to raise your hand if you're interested to ask questions or make comment regarding item 6 department updates.
Anybody in the room? Anybody online?
We have 3 raised hands online, beginning with Bill Gaines.
Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, thank you very much. I just wanted to extend a big thank you to the department staff, Chad, Scott, Mario, and Brian Leo, when it comes to their efforts to reach out to the public and gather their thoughts on the deer management plan. Major effort, as Scott mentioned, they've had countless, public meetings, and they met with us privately before some of those as well. So they've really put a lot of work into this deer management plan, and we wanted to thank them for doing so and for seeking these public comments and getting their feedback early in the process so that those thoughts can be incorporated as appropriate into the plan. So huge thank you to Scott again, Mario, Chad, and Brian Leo for that. Secondly, as Scott mentioned, the big game management account and the upland game bird management committees, advisory committees, both have met recently, and that also is a ton of staff work. So we appreciate those efforts as well. So big thank you to the staff on all of those things.
Thank you, Bill. Next.
Kimberly Richard, go ahead.
Yes, I just want to piggyback on what Bill Gaines had to say. Y'all did a phenomenal job, each and every one of you. But I would also like to give a shout out to our wildlife officials, our law enforcement with the wildlife. That was a fantastic job taking down those traffickers and those poachers. As I know, a lot of good ethical hunters hate trophy hunt or poaching. Especially animals like elephants and lions and so forth. Just wanted to say thank you so much and congratulations on getting the new wildlife officers. I know that our wildlife officers here in Napa County is really thin, and they do a tremendous amount of awesome work here. So thank you so much for the work you're doing.
Thank you very much. Next.
Pamela Williams, go ahead.
Regarding the invitation to Montana and Wyoming wildlife agencies to share info on wolf management, I wondered if you have considered the Idaho Wood River Wolf Project, which advocates for non-lethal conflict mitigation with ranchers, and which has been operating in an intensively sheep area for more than a decade. So I would encourage you, given that Montana and Wyoming don't have a particularly good reputation in terms of managing wolves. So please consider another advocacy voice that advocates for non-lethal. Thank you.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, and again, I didn't mean to leave them off the list. I just mentioned those two, and also you have Washington and Oregon. I just think that, in looking at, all of the states, we should consider what people are doing. Very similar to when we looked at chronic wasting disease, we looked at what else had been done throughout the country and around the world. All right, anybody else online?
We have no further hand raise on Zoom.
Great. All right. Well, then moving on to general public comment. I will go ahead and start here in the room. Carl?
So I'm Carl Kirster. I'm a local falconer. And I want to go back to 2012 when the regulations were being worked on. The federal regulations for falconry had been revised, and the every state was in the process of updating the state regulations to comply with the federal. And in 2012, we were assured, we being falconers, were assured that the new regulations would be as liberal as the federal regulations would allow, and that we would be very happy. And it took it was going very slowly. In 2013, we being the state, we're coming to the deadline that the feds had set of completing the process and implementing the new regulations by January 1st, 2014. And so we were persuaded to accept what was in the process in 2013 with the promise of redoing and taking out all the mistakes that had found their way into the regulations, which unfortunately we are still sitting on in 2026. We never got our rewrite to where we were going to have the kind of easy to work with, smooth regulations like Wyoming and Texas have, and California has some of the most onerous and unreasonable provisions in the falconry regulations that would be very easy for the department to revise. And we were given a promise, but Eric Loft was long gone by now, who was there at the time. And I understood that in the process of trying to do the job that we were coming to a deadline and had to accept what was there. But it's time to revise the falconry regulations and take out the things that were mistakes and shouldn't have been put in. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Carl. Anybody else in the room? Seeing none. Anybody else online?
We have no raised hands online.
Just highlighting again that this is item 7, general public comment.
So if hearing none, we will move on to future agenda items. Art?
Okay, so the so the next meeting is scheduled for May 14th, 2026. It will be here in Sacramento, probably in this building as well. Yes, it'll be in this building. As far as the work plan goes, we're proposing one small change from name change from inland sport fishing to just sport fishing, removing the word inland to reflect the tiny little marine part of that package. So for the May meeting, we are at this point, we have proposed initial vetting for all of the annual and periodic rulemakings. So that would be upland game bird hunting, the big game hunting packages, including deer, elk, pronghorn, antelope, black bear, and bighorn sheep. That's not to say that we will have recommendations or proposals for rulemakings on all of them. We'll have to see what the department comes up with, but at least updates on all of them. Also waterfowl hunting, Central Valley sport fishing, Klamath River Basin sport fishing. And we will get potential recommendations on 2 that were presented today, department lands and mammal trapping. At this point, there are no new topics proposed, but if something comes up, we'll present that at a commission meeting and the commission can approve it.
That's correct.
And the wolf presentation, any discussion about timing on that?
We'd be better poised in May coming out of the conversations that we need to have right now to potentially put that on the agenda. It just depends on, I can't remember what cycles in May. There's pretty heavy sometimes in May, so we can probably take that into consideration as a, I don't know if you need to put it on there and we pull it up now and pull it off later, or however you need to do it if it's not ripe or ready or timed, but that would be probably okay.
We can consider it, and as we get closer to
Yeah.
May, we'll
Yeah,
check.
that's
check in
great.
with you.
I mean, that gives us
I
some
think that's
time
helpful.
coming out
Yeah.
of, there's lots of conversations happening and
Yeah,
the other problem we have is, having trying to be as transparent as we can, but recognizing that literally this is a fluid thing. And so the minute we talk to you tomorrow,
yeah.
it could be something else. So trying to figure
Right.
out how we have an informative conversation that's factual and true and as enlightening, as transparent as we can about what's going on in the future, but recognizing that there's lots happening in space. And you're also going to get into right in the middle of budget world and things happening on that end. So
Sure.
I think May's probably okay for
Yeah.
us to be able to try to schedule something if we wanted to.
That's helpful. That's great. That's perfect timing. Thanks, Melissa. Is there anything else from staff?
That's it.
All right. With that in mind, I think we are adjourned.
The recommendation for the.
Sorry. Wildlife Resource Committee recommends that the commission update the committee work plan and any proposed changes identified today. Thank you, everyone.